We have a public hearing, but I believe that, Rich, you're party to that public hearing, and it's still in hiatus, right?
Correct. The 100 grist mill, yes.
Yeah, okay. So let's move on to the the approval of the minutes, I'm sorry. The minutes of June 1st. I took a look at them, and I think there's 3 areas. Line 9, the people that are present, neither Donna nor Melissa were present on the 1st, and no alternates were there at all, actually. So line 12 needs to be corrected. And on line 48, Mr. Gray reaffirmed that he is staying with the 750 feet. There's just missing a he, I think, in there. And on line 55, I believe Jamie Rabbit's name is misspelled. And that's all I have on the 1st. Anybody else got any others?
I do. If you look on line 83, I think you need to put a period and a capital for you. It says option C would keep it conforming. You could add language. I think you want to make it would keep it conforming, period, and use would be starting the next sentence.
Good catch. Any others?
No, I don't have anything.
Can we have a motion to adopt the minutes as modified?
I'll move adoption of the minutes as modified.
Mayor, second?
I will second.
Second from Shannon. Wow.
I'm on
Okay.
fire.
On the board.
Fire.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. It carries 6-0. Thank you. Second, the minutes of July 6th. I have a couple of comments that are way down there near the end. I think things are getting a little fuzzy there. On line 103, I inquired if mixed use is sensible in this type of community, but I think it should say, instead of rather than, or is it better in a more urban community? I looked at the video on SCTV, and that's pretty much what I said. And
So the word rather, Dave, you're proposing striking the word rather?
Rather than a, and turn it into, or is it better in a more
Okay.
environment or area?
Got it.
Okay, on line 23, Ms. Elliott is really Mr. Elliott.
I wasn't going to say anything about that, but okay.
Okay, that's all I have. Anybody else got anything on the July 6th?
I have a couple of little things.
Okay.
On line 21, it probably, it says Diane Madigan was appointed to sit or Michael Doyle. Probably should say for Michael Doyle.
Yes.
Good. Hawkeye.
Well, I have two more.
Okay.
Little ones. Line 66. It says indicated that he feels that in the code as it stands now, something within in is impairment. I think you want to take out the second in.
Mr. Elliott indicated that he feels the code as it stands now. In the code as it stands now, there's some commas needed in there.
Okay.
something within it,
Yeah,
but is impairment, that's, I think we should probably say something within it impairs encouraging economic activity. How's that?
sounds good.
Bruce, how's that?
I'm struggling trying to remember what had intended to communicate. Never mind exactly what the wording was. But I think the gist of what I was trying to raise was trying to get at the specifics of if there are things that need to be changed in the code because they're impairing economic development, we need to get on it. You know what I mean?
Yep. Well, I think if we change it to within it impairs.
Impairs,
economic-
yeah, that sounds good. Within it impairs, well, encouraging economic activity. Yeah, okay. Within that area versus the
Yep.
well, yeah.
Okay. More, Ann?
Nope, that's it.
That's it?
Uh-huh.
Evening, Mike. Okay. Shannon, I think you're decommissioned.
Man,
Sorry.
Mike, come on.
Here, I'll drop out.
Sweet. It
Welcome,
was my
Mike.
big moment.
I'm happy to sit on the sideline. You've already seated Shannon.
It's okay. I'm just giving you a hard time.
5 minutes in and one vote, so good. So here to approve the minutes of July 6th as modified.
I'll move approval of the minutes for July 6th as they were amended.
Any second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Donna. Okay, any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 6-0. Thank you. Okay, the next order on our agenda is to hear from our guest speakers, Mark Greenberg and Rich Correa, who are both on this call. So we'll do that, and then we'll move on to discussion of the sign regulations and how we can proceed from here.
Can I interject for 1 second, Dave?
Sure.
Sorry. I just had someone texting me saying that she wanted to participate in public audience, but she couldn't get in. So,
That's
Well,
okay, because there isn't any public audience.
we don't have public audience. We have a public hearing, but the public hearing is tabled.
okay, then that's okay. Thank you.
And the way public audience is being handled in comments is that they're supposed to be emailed,
Right.
I think to the town clerk, right, Mike?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, let's go on. Who wants to start, Mark or Rich?
Rich, I'm pointing at you.
All right, I'll start.
You start, I interject.
All right.
In the dark.
Well, okay, so sorry to be in the dark. I thought it would be a lot brighter up here with the sun behind me setting, and but anyway, thank you for having us here. We've had plenty of discussions with Mike about economic development, the PAD, and obviously you as a commission, you gave us a tool when we're marketing property to use, and in my discussions with Mike, he had said that here come we've seen the apartment product come in, but what is stopping the other type of businesses to come along with it? And I can give you a little history on as it relates to Mark Greenberg's property down at the old Eversource property. When he bought it, you had Eversource. They were there all by themselves, and they soon were telling him they were leaving there. And Mark had a big empty building that he had to make a determination. Do I tear it down? What do I do with it? And while he was trying to figure that out, you came up with the pad concept, and Aspen Green came about. Aspen Green today is paying the town $839,000 a year in tax revenue. So to me, that's a good positive effect. Because Mark no longer had the pressure of making a decision about, do I leave the building up, do I tear it down, the opportunity came to him to possibly move a tenant in there, and the tenant happened to be Curaleaf. And as we all know, they've moved in there. Mike has a better handle as for what they've spent on terms of improvements they put into the property, but they've easily have put in over $15 million of renovation. And between the building and their equipment thus far, they have, that's $230,000 a year of tax revenue. And then Mark still has the other pieces of land there. And as you add it all up, we have $1,132,000 coming in off of a site that is set up for a pad. Now you say, where are the next tenants coming from? And a couple of months ago, we had a discussion with you how we've been talking with, and we still have a letter of intent with a self-storage facility. And at that time, I remember a couple of faces grimacing that, self-storage is not really, a great economic driver. However, they're looking at a 3.3 acre site on Mark's land. And because of that, we had a possibility with a health club of some type, but COVID came along, so that deal went away. But in the meantime, we've been approached by someone that's looking at a smaller 14,000 square foot building, for lack of a better term, I'll call it an assisted living. And because of the self-storage, we can do the assisted living. So altogether, we're looking at about 5.3 acres of land that will be developed to the back of the property, still leaving the front. And then who are we going to find for the front? And as we sit here today, and every day I open up my trade journals and I'm seeing who's the next retailer and restaurant that's going out of business, and what's happening across the country. Opportunity will come. We just have to be ready for it. And by you giving us the tools to be ready and the freedom and the flexibility to adapt to what is happening in the marketplace, it helps, Mark, on this piece of property. This is, it's live. You can see it. You can drive by it. And again, you're looking at $1,132,868.59 of tax revenue on an annual basis from what's there today. Never mind adding another potential $213,000 worth of taxables on top of that, and then what goes in the front. That is Route 10202. So the demand for uses along 10202 isn't the same as it is on Route 44. With the PAD in the future, Mark, Mr. Greenberg owns a piece of land in Simsbury. There's 18 acres in Simsbury and another 34 in Canton. So it'll be a joint project between both communities. And hopefully with the PAD, we'll be able to come into you with an exciting project that will generate another $1 million of tax revenue to the town. But again, giving the developers flexibility leads to opportunity, and you have to make the economics work. And thus far, Simsbury used to be known as a town that was too difficult to deal with. And I think that, this board and, your town staff has done a great job at changing that mentality of what's out there. And if you would like to hear other things, Mark owns a property over in Windsor, and over there we're using sport as a driver to bring further economic development. And we have a Simsbury resident, David Rocha, that owns Fast Pitch Nation. He has 11 women's softball fields there. So from any age at the beginning up through college, it's tournament based. Because of that, we have negotiations, and we'll have an approval in a couple of weeks on an indoor-outdoor soccer facility. And we're having discussion now with other type of recreational uses like that. But because of those activities, there's a deal with a hotel, there's deals with restaurants. I had a call a half an hour ago from another restaurant that wants to do a pad site because they see the activity happening behind the property. All of the frontage along Day Hill Road is still available on Mark's property to be developed, and we're developing everything from the back coming forward. And as people see that activity, then they start coming up to us with concepts and ideas. So as an overview, I start. Mark, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, what I'd like to add, you mentioned about how Simsbury used to have a bad reputation for development. And I'd say that this particular commission in town has now moved 180 degrees from that. And it doesn't have, not only does it not have a bad reputation, I think it has a great reputation. I think that this board and the commissioners have done a tremendous job bringing this town into 21st century and offsetting some residential uses and tax dollars with commercial. And obviously that's why we're sitting here. So I want to thank everybody for that huge turnaround. The property at 34 Hob Meadow, it's been a bit of a challenge in the front in that restaurants are not picking away at it. We know what's happening with that. Perhaps there will be some interest from drive-through restaurants because of this pandemic, and drive-through has become a bit hot. But the way I see it, I see health-related and medical-related as being the best opportunities for the remainder of the property. Folks in this state are getting older, as they are everywhere, and this seems to be one growing industry in this state. I know that I've leased out space now to new space to Hartford Healthcare in Litchfield, and Yale New Haven is looking for a large facility in Mystic and a property that I own. So I do see medical and facilities related to the elder people as being a growth industry in this state. I'm not in a rush to do anything, and as I've said many times to this commission and elsewhere, I only do what I feel that I'm going to be proud about doing. Generally, I don't sell any land. I only lease land. Rich didn't mention, but the two uses that we have working in the back are leased land deals, not at this time at least sale lands. So I try to hold on to anything I can. With regard to the self-storage in the back, I did and do recognize an interest in keeping the view from Route 34 as attractive as possible. And I've said to Rich that we're not going to allow the self-storage to be seen from Route 10 and Route 202. So we'll build a berm and it simply will not be visible. So it's a good use, but it won't be visible because there is a, I guess, character about it still at this point in time. So we'll just wait until the right use comes. And I'm actually reminded about another use, Rich, that popped our way about a year ago, a restaurant, but I thought it was going to be a terrible addition to Simsbury.
Right.
I just told them to leave. So anyway, you have my promise that I'll be a custodian for the Gateway and for Route 10, just like you will be.
And just as a point of reference, the two self-storage facilities in Simsbury, they pay $177,000 a year in tax revenue. The one at the north end of town and the one in off of West Street. And the one that we're talking to, if we came in, mid-range, probably somewhere around, 88,000 a year of tax revenue coming from that facility.
And Richard, you reminded me, you actually did the numbers on the new taxes, which I hadn't done.
Yep.
But I do recall when it was simply Eversource, Seal, and P, my total taxes on that whole 60 acres was somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 100,000, no more than that.
Yep.
So we've times that by 10, and we still have other development capabilities. And frankly, I think that this commission and other commissions in Simsbury has recognized that good commercial and or industrial use on the land is a benefit because it keeps the mill rate down. I think I pointed out years ago that the mill rate in Avon was substantially lower than Simsbury. I think you've bridged a lot of that gap. As a matter of fact, I think in Simsbury, your mill rate has decreased slightly this year, if I'm not mistaken. And you certainly made up the loss in income from the Hartford to a large extent between my property and the Silverman property up north. So you've done a really good job in replacing that lost income and stabilizing the tax base. The other thing I would like to say is that somebody was asking, why does the commercial not come as quickly as you'd like it to? The old rule in retail, in development, is that the retail follows the rooftops. If you don't have the rooftops, the retail is going to be slow in coming. And I remember a comment maybe 4 years ago at a meeting, planning and zoning meeting, where maybe some of these commission members right here were saying that you want to put a stop or a hold on residential development. Which I think is a mistake, so long as it's tasteful and so long as the school system can absorb those additional students, which I think you can. I think you're still sort of needing of students in terms of the bricks and mortar of the schools. So I would just give my advice to allow the residential so long as it's tasteful and so long as you give your good critical eye on it. It may be that we're going to come back to this commission and ask for a residential use on the top of the mountain on Route 44, which is next to Hoffman and on top of Betty Fiora's old property. Again, maybe because there's a greater need for housing at this point in time than retail. So those are my general comments. And again, thank you for your great participation in this process. And I think you've done an absolutely outstanding job, especially Mike, as a staff member. I'm sorry, Mike, but I have to embarrass you. You've done a hell of a job.
No comment, Mike.
Thanks.
Bravo.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
We would like to hear from your perspective what specifically in our regulations is something that needs to be modified or changed. I mean, we're looking at regs right now.
Right. And I'd like to be able to tell you right now what needs amendment or change, but I can't because I'm not completely familiar with the regulations. I do remember that I think TJ Donahue and I were instrumental in bringing about this pad regulation for the Eversource site at the time. But to be honest with you, I don't know if they're cumbersome, not cumbersome, or whether they're workable. I guess I'd have to try to figure that out. If you want my opinion, I'd be able to give that and write my prospective changes in a clear format so that I don't just talk without the knowledge behind it.
We're planning to spend some time looking into the pad regulation because it has been criticized for only producing residential development, and maybe your answer that the retail follows the rooftops is something that we should just sit back and wait for. And that's the response to the criticism that we've heard. But it's good to hear it from you.
Well, there's no doubt that the rooftops follow that the commercial development follows rooftops. There's no question about that. I've been very patient in a piece of property I own in Tehachapi, California. I must say way too patient, as in the neighborhood, in 15, 16, 17 years. And it's only now that rooftops are being proposed in the area where I own 25 acres right off a highway. So at this point in time, I'm looking like an overnight genius, and it's taken me 15 years and an absolutely miserable deal to look like an overnight genius. But I guess the bottom line is that you need to look carefully and allow residential done tastefully. I felt that the Ziggy Wolf development on my property, Garden Homes, I thought they did a really nice, tasteful job. I don't think that the Silverstein property is nearly as nicely done, to be very frank and honest with you. I know that when I was in front of the commission, we were discussing having absolute clear sight lines to the tower. We had to prove it. We had to do videos of it. And even now, as I drive by, there's absolutely no way that you don't see the ridge line clearly and properly. When I drive by the Silverstein property, I see things in the way, to be very frank with you. So I'm not just touting my subdivision, but I think it was done quite nicely.
TJ's car was much higher.
Yeah, you could be right about that, but
No,
you're going to do your job and do a good job to make sure that the residential developments are tasteful and in the interest of the town. I would just, again, give my advice to not make a blanket statement that we've had enough residential. We don't need any more. I think you have to be open-minded to it. And the commercial will follow the rooftops. It will happen.
And Mark, to play off of that, Big Y is under construction, due to open September 1st. And the reason they came back is because of the number of apartments that they started to see become developed in Simsbury, and they relooked at the market and felt as though it was more depth to it, and to encourage them to invest, $10 to $12 million to put up that building.
Right. Well, you can make the same statement for Whole Foods as well. I think
that's right.
They've done their research. They see people coming into this area. This is one of the most desirable areas in the state of Connecticut, in my opinion. A beautiful area. Simsbury is an incredible town. So we're going to gain, or we have the capability of gaining the population from other towns that have not done as good a job. Connecticut is still losing population at a very small rate. So there's a migration within Connecticut. People are coming from less desirable communities to more desirable communities. And as long as you keep on controlling your cost, keeping the mill rate stable, supplementing your tax base with good commercial uses, people will want to come here. And that, by the way, is one reason why we've refocused on the Simsbury and Canton property to accommodate, 350 units, Rich, or I don't know the amount, between the two towns. Both towns. About even, right? 150 apiece? Yeah. So this is the strength of the market. And I would just, again, say allow it, but be careful about the design and how it is done. That's done tastefully.
Other comments from the commission? Anybody have questions?
I have a couple questions. Thank you for both Rich and Mr. Greenberg for coming tonight. We appreciate that because this is obviously for us, not for you. So it's good. Questions on the when you do the pad development. One of the things we've done within the pads is it seems that the commercial is still separated from the housing. And is there an opportunity for example, near your clubhouse, would there not be an opportunity there to have like a coffee shop nearer to the center instead of to the outside? Or are you going to eventually plan on relying on Route 10 traffic?
My quick answer to that is not enough. If it doesn't have great visibility, there's not going to be enough of a base to support it. I don't think. Rich, what do you think?
I think it depends upon what part of town it happens to be in. In the center of town, I think that works well. But as you get to the north and south of Simsbury, it's hard to integrate it in, so far off the road. And you don't want to have, a 3-story building up on top of Hot Meadow Street either. I like the way the regulation was drafted, where you go with, the most you're supposed to have is two and a half stories, but you're leaving the view corridor open to, to the ridge. And you hold that by having, some nice green space along Hot Meadow, and then the building sets back. So Kevin would love to say that, right in the middle, right in the center of those apartments, a coffee shop would make it. But we're not sure if they would have enough outside business other than just the residents that are there.
Yeah, and then then the question is, would the residents want outside people coming in?
Do they want that life? Right.
Pardon?
Yeah, do they want that lifestyle? It's they want the urban setting, whereas in downtown Simsbury, they can live with the urban setting. It's working out well with Metro Beast and the 5 apartments that are upstairs, and but as you get out into the the ends of town, they don't necessarily want to be right on top of commercial use.
Yeah, and it might be a smaller shop that would be near your clubhouse. I'm not sure how it would be developed. I was just wondering if that kind of thing would work or not, based on the market. The other thing is, did Garden Homes on their own do some affordable housing units within that development?
They did.
Yes, that was part of your approval.
Yep.
I think 15%. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they set it on. Mike, remember they set that on their own? That wasn't a requirement for them. They went and did it on their own.
That's correct. That's correct. And Mark, I think it was, it's either 10 or 15% was set aside.
Yeah.
I want to say 10, but it may actually have been 15.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was 10% because there's 18 deed restricted units there out of 182 units.
Correct. Yeah.
And they've also done some handicap accessible units in there too, which we're seeing a great demand for today, unfortunately.
Okay, so are they saying that they can afford to do that in that development and still make it profitable for them? Since they didn't ask for any incentive, I was just wondering.
Well, he's done it successfully elsewhere as well, and I don't really know his business. I used to be in residential New York City, but his rents on the other 90% are pretty high.
Yeah.
And he's got a waiting list, so I think he's very successful doing it.
Rents need to be higher.
Okay, well, and your development in there does have a little bit more of the commercial because of the Curaleaf and the health club or assisted living now and the storage. So you are starting to commercial be developed in that whole complex. We just didn't see it in front of the apartments, but there is in the whole package. There's some commercial development being done.
Oh yeah, there's a lot in front on the right, the theoretical lot, in the front of the right, in front on the left of the apartments, actually in front of Curaleaf. Curaleaf lease does not start at the edge of the easement that we created. We create a buffer and an easement. So Curaleaf does not start at the edge of the buffer. There's yet another area for a building or a development directly in front of Curaleaf. And Curaleaf has told me they'd be more than happy to have something block them. So there's plenty of area there for development. But again, I do things very smartly and carefully, and I don't rush, and I don't have to rush. So together we're going to build something attractive and something which will be a benefit to the town.
I think what we're struggling with a little bit is the new urbanist images that were part of the sales pitch for doing these kinds of things. And the kind of commercial we're seeing isn't anything like the new urbanist stuff. And but I think it's okay from my standpoint. It's just different.
Right, that's kind of where I was headed. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the new urbanists talk about walkability from the apartment or from the home to all sorts of other commercial uses and services. Nice concept, but the bottom line is that we can't. The economic model, I don't think, works to have enough of those businesses within a small suburban pod. I guess you got to go where the money is. You know what they say? Go where the money is. I can't make it work. I'm sorry. It's a great concept, I guess, if you're in New York City or Boston, but I can't make it work here.
Another thing too is a couple of years ago, Mark had an opportunity from a 9,600 square foot user that wanted to go right up in front, and not exactly the the type of building design and possibly even type of sales that they would want to put in town, and they were unable to reach a deal, and that was in large part because Mark held out for something better.
Guys.
Appreciate the good intentions, but let me just offer this, that I think that we have to keep in mind that
We're not hearing you, Bruce.
our regulations are the best thinking that we have at any particular time. But what is more important is our commitment to change and our willingness to consider other things. And I think that's what developers have found the last couple of years anyway, maybe more. I don't want to shortchange anybody, but we have to be willing to change. And I think we've demonstrated that of late. And I think that'll continue. That we can agonize over trying to perfect regulations, and then a year, 5 years, 10 years down the road, they're not as meaningful as we intended. And we hear that somewhat frequently about our PAD regulation, but.
You're absolutely right. You're 100% right, Bruce. You could come up with all these great theories, and then 5 years later, then you have a pandemic and everything changes.
Exactly.
It's almost, by the time you finish a regulation, it's already old.
Yeah.
So
Mark, I want to add one more comment two. One is that as I drive, I live on Lincoln Lane. And so I see the apartments at, the development at the bottom of our street. But my wife was suggested at the public hearing to approve that master plan that a sidewalk be put in there. And we like seeing that sidewalk. We walk down there from time to time all the way down to the center of Avon and back, and it's a mile. But to see that sidewalk is a nice thing. And if it went further north, that would be even better. But I recognize that you're trying to deal with the area that's being developed, and maybe we'll see more in the future, but it's appreciated. So thank you for that. And
you're welcome.
My last thing is there's 300 housing units committed to in the center of Avon that are less than 2 miles from the area that you're trying to, see something come along. And hopefully those rooftops will be part of encouraging the kind of development that would fill the spaces, in your master plan.
But those are not being built though now, are they?
No.
I don't believe they've been started. They're just starting the retail. Yeah. Funny thing.
Yeah. You see, the way it works in this kind of business is nobody believes anything's going to happen until it's done. So that's just the way it is. I mean, Rich could tell you the number of approvals he's gotten over the years, and then do a calculation of the percentage of those approvals that actually were built. I think my record is pretty good in that I tend to build what I get approval on, but you got to see it being built. That's just the way it is.
I was just thinking today about the number that come in that tell us that they're in a hurry. They don't want to miss this construction season, that we need help. We need to expedite and to a great extent, we try to do that, but it's not there are those occasions where the projects never go forward.
That's right. I mean, you talk about that. I'll give you a perfect example. There's a fellow name of Andy Borgia who's promoting a sports complex on a thrall piece of land in where's that? Windsor Locks, right, Rich?
Windsor Locks. Yep, Windsor Locks. Yep.
Well, he's on the verge of getting approval, and he gets on the verge of getting approval. Then please hurry up. He was out of his contract just recently, and the first selectman had to beg Joe Thrall to give an extension because they've worked so hard for this for 3 years. And even when they do get the approval, if they do get the approval, I would give a good bet that it's never going to be closed on and it's never going to be built, because what he's trying to do is what I'm successfully doing in Windsor. And there's only so many pieces, so much brick and mortar that can be built for the same use. So anyway, that's the way it is. Once these units are built, then yes, the retail will pick up. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
And there's close proximity to an area that Hartford Healthcare has made a major investment in on the Avon side of the town line.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And if there's enough bodies in the area, potentially they'll be interested in more.
Absolutely correct.
And they've got your phone number, I understand.
Do they ever?
They all do. They get a lot of calls. Yeah.
Donna, you want to ask him about doing vertical development?
Well, I think they already address that by saying, that the appeal for the urban development is only strong in the middle of the town. My idea was, we have all these little out parcels that we have trouble getting commercial in, and whether if it was integrated vertically, whether that would be more helpful or not. But I think that you addressed that already.
Yeah, talking again about how things change. 18 years ago when I bought that property from CLNP, and for years after that, I was thinking that it would be a perfect pad site for a bank. Well, now I'm looking like a total idiot. I mean, nobody's building banks. Bricks and mortar banks are a thing of the past, and they're going to continue to be downsized. So things change rapidly, really rapidly. We're talking on a Zoom meeting, and that wasn't around 2 years ago. I mean, things are changing so rapidly. And what I would say about your pad regulations is make sure there's a statement in bold that says, we will change our pad regulations if you come in with something good. That's the bottom line. Be flexible. And, I've always known this commission to be extremely flexible. And again, I appreciate that. The committee you had 10 years ago was one of the worst in the state, frankly. And nobody wanted to be in Simsbury. Nobody wanted to be because of the abuse that we would get. So I have no doubt no matter what you do or what you don't do, you will treat the next application fairly and properly and amend as needed. So not my concern. I truly trust this commission.
Thank you, I guess. Comments, Mike? You haven't said anything.
I have nothing to add, Mr. Chairman.
Dan?
Nothing to add either.
Well, thank you very much, you guys. Appreciate you coming, spending time with us.
Now, when were you thinking we might see a proposal on that the Canton Simsbury property? Mrs. Fiora's former.
Yes, the Canton property, we're going to be going in front of the Canton Board of Selectmen in about a month, Rich, maybe?
Right, but yeah, sometime in August for the road.
Yeah, and in Simsbury on top, right away. I mean, 2-3 months, Rich, right?
Yep.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That's great. I was driving by there recently, and I was thinking the restaurant owner who's involved with you now, he's probably looking forward to seeing something happen with his restaurant too.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a very long story. Okay.
I suspect it probably is.
That's a very long story, but we've been begging him to join our entrance with our new parking. We're going to have a traffic light at the top of the hill. Traditionally, as you know, it's been nearly impossible to get across, making a left-hand turn going eastbound on 44, very dangerous. So what we're proposing includes a traffic light. And I was going to help him with the excavation of the rock in front of his restaurant.
Really?
But he just backed down 2 days ago because he's very nervous about giving up his westerly entrance. Now, if you remember, he's got two entrances, one on Brass Mountain Road, a westerly and an easterly. He's extremely nervous about giving up his westerly. And I've told him, you're going to have to give it up because OS is not going to let you have it because there are going to be too many accidents making that left-hand turn into his westerly.
Right.
But he doesn't like my answer. So as of 2 days ago, he's going to go off on his own to go for approval. Anyway, I wish him luck. But the bottom line is we'll be applying to Simsbury in the next 2-3 months for those apartments.
And when it just pre-COVID-19, we had a list of junior boxes, classier retail, if you will, that could have gone there, and now they'll be those people that we were talking to will be filling in space that will be vacated as you watch what happens over the next 12 months. So there's no need to build anything new. They're going to be able to step into situations and pay rent that we could never charge them because it's brand new product.
Yeah, like Bed Bath and Beyond. Closing up their Torrington. I don't know if they're closing up their Avon or Simsbury. I'm not sure where they are.
It's Simsbury.
Is that Simsbury? Are they closing that one?
I'm
How
not
far?
sure.
I don't know.
Haven't
But
heard.
like Cyril Tab is closing all their stores, and we just have a slew of
Yeah,
retailers.
retail is not a place to be right now. So there's going to be a lot of backfilling. And retail might not necessarily be backfilling with retail, because as a shopping center becomes highly vacant, call it 50, 55, 60% vacant, and owner starts thinking about a demolition, demolition of the site and a reuse.
Repurpose, huh?
Yeah, now maybe you'll remember that we got the zone changed on that from residential to commercial. Another example of how it turns out I'm the dumbest guy known to man. And that was just a year ago. So, you got to take it all with a grain of salt and a laugh, because otherwise you'll be buried. Anyway, thanks a lot, everybody. I hope I've been helpful. And Kevin, don't call me Mr. Greenberg. Call me Mark. My dad is Mr. Greenberg. Makes me feel too old.
That's good. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's talk about sign regulations.
Thanks for your time.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
For listening to us. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Sign regulations. Mike put up the court cases, a couple of court cases that are driving the change, and also a sample that I think came from Bob D. of prospective sign regulation. I don't know if you all read that, but I found it hard going. There's a lot in it that's not applicable to us. And in the discussion with Mike this afternoon, he said that he might be able to adapt our regs to that format to give us something to start with. Is that what I heard right, Mike?
That's correct.
So perhaps that's what we should ask him to do, and not try to slog it out here through that format. Comments?
What are you suggesting, that we just kind of highlight in red where our current regs may need to be changed? Or are you talking about Mike doing a whole thing from scratch?
I think what Mike was talking about was looking at the format that Bob D said would pass the test of the courts, and adapting our regulations into that format as much as we could. And give us a shot and come back to us with that as a draft for us to work from.
And I was kind of going the other way, saying, take a look at your reg and see what he thinks doesn't comply. And then we just have to change that.
There's a lot of highlighting then.
Yeah, you think?
Well, I'd still like to see it. I mean, I think that before we sort of commit to a huge undertaking with let's scrap whatever our regulations are now and take this model thing and tweak that, and that'll be our new regulation. I think that we need an effort to identify what parts of our regulations currently would fail if we're challenged based on those court cases, acknowledging that Supreme Court case was in 2014. So that's been around going on 6 years. And I don't know. I mean, I read the paper every day. I didn't see any stories yet about towns changing their, the massive wave to abandon former sign regulation in the state of Connecticut because we've been misled by the legislature. And we all have these codes that won't pass muster with the Supreme Court. It doesn't.
Supreme Court.
Yeah, it seems like something's missing here. And I think what's missing is we haven't been educated along the way that we're failing. I haven't seen Bob DiCrescenzo's face in my most recent term on the zoning commission, so I don't get to talk to the guy. But somebody, I mean, I don't know why there isn't a more sort of focused communication about our failure to stay current, that we're operating on regulations and we're holding them out there to developers and business owners. as these are our regulations, knowing that they don't pass muster with the current legal environment, that strikes me as troublesome, but we can't undo where we are.
The question is, how can we get it done the most efficiently?
Right.
Mike thought using the format that Bob D said passes muster and putting our regs in that format, he's not really changing a lot, was the easiest thing for him to do. To go through our current regs and say, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right. Maybe that's easy to do. I don't know.
Yeah, how long would it take?
I
I
can
mean,
get
if
this-
we can't. I just
actually-
don't see us relying on Bruce Elliott to interpret Supreme Court decisions and apply
So-
them to the regulations in Simsbury. We've got
So,
the wrong person here. I don't know how to. I mean, I'm no expert.
We're suggesting.
I actually discussed this matter with Bob DiCrescenzo last week at our legal update, and I explained to him what I thought was an appropriate direction, which was what I explained to Dave, is that taking our regs and plugging into the model code and seeing that get that for the next meeting. That's not, for me, that would be the quickest, probably most efficient effort towards addressing this matter. We've been waiting for this version to come out, this model sign reg, in order to have this conversation. Because unfortunately, after Reed versus Gilbert came out, the U.S. Supreme Court case, a lot of communities kind of said, we're going to wait and see who changes it first. And I've been asking Bob for a good example. This was the best example we have to use.
So he doesn't have an example in Farmington or anywhere in the Farmington Valley or anywhere else in Connecticut. He just has, that code was from the Northwest somewhere, if I remember right.
That's correct.
County west of Portland.
Yeah,
So I suggested a similar community in the area. I don't want to say who it was, but my counterpart proclaimed to me, my regs are Reed versus Gilbert. You should look at my regs. So I actually shared the regs with Bob and asked for an opinion and said, Bob, what's your take on this? Because I'm reading it and I'm kind of not seeing the same. And he agreed with me. He said, do not use those regs as your guide. They did not address the legal issues. So, this is kind of Bob D. blessed approach towards the sign regs. If the commission wants to do it the other way, I'm happy to go through and highlight the issues in the regs.
How long could it take? The regs already. Yeah.
I can have it for the next meeting. It will take me. It'll take me for the next. Well, actually, ironically, see,
couple hours.
We don't. Yeah. Our next meeting isn't until September 21st.
Right.
So
there's plenty of time.
I could, in the meantime, between now and the 21st of September, I can go through, do the review on the regs, post it on the Dropbox so that everyone can access it, email the commission and say that document's up there before the 21st.
Yeah. Okay.
And that way we save time. So we're not waiting till the 21st to have that conversation.
Okay. But I don't want to make this more than it is. I'm just looking for, what is in place today that would fail challenge in this current legal environment, not, everything that might be changed if, we had all the time and all the money, but what do we have in place that fails? Maybe is it every page of, the whole thing, every paragraph?
The key to the Reed versus Gilbert decision is that your regulations can't create a system of class or users. So you can't have the not-for-profit business can put one kind of sign up, and then the freedom of speech people can put another sign up, and then the next group of users. So you're regulating by users. You can't do that. Our regs have a list of users in them. What it's supposed to, the way that U.S. Supreme Court case reads is that you can regulate signage by zoning district. You can't regulate it by who is in the zoning district, no matter what they're doing. So you can say residential zoning district, you're allowed 2 square feet for a sign as of right. 6 square feet, you need a site plan. 32 square feet, you need a special permit. Doesn't matter why you want to put up that sign, you need a special permit. That's the way that the regulations, according to that U.S. Supreme Court, are supposed to be set up. We have a lot of different categories. That's the problem.
Okay, I didn't think we had the category thing. I thought it was pretty similar. I mean, we don't distinguish between a church and a commercial.
Well, it'd be interesting. Am I muted? No.
No, you're on.
It'd be interesting to me to see the parts of our current regs that don't meet muster, but then to have a comparison and have the regs put into the new form next to that, so we could kind of compare what we had, what the problem was, and be able to look at what the supposed answer is and see how we feel about that. I don't know if anybody else.
I think that's what Mike said he was going to work toward.
Yeah, but I think if people were also interested in just seeing our current regs and like highlighted what was wrong with them. So that way we would have both kind of what's wrong with them and how you propose to fix them to kind of go back and forth and
so maybe the interest of time, what I could do is set some goals right now and say by August 1st, I'm going to upload the review of the regs, Reed versus Gilbert, the areas of which are in conflict with that decision. Then by the next zoning commission meeting, I prefer to do it prior to the next zoning commission meeting. So let's say normally we would have met on Labor Day. By September 7th, I will upload to your Dropbox a copy of your regulations plugged into that model reg. So then you'll have both documents before you at the next meeting on the 21st. You'll have your existing regs kind of critiqued or reviewed first. So at least you understand what we're walking into. Is everyone okay with that approach?
Mm-hmm. I am.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
I would find that helpful.
I'll take that homework assignment.
Okay, good. Good. Are we ready to move on?
What's next?
Bruce had brought up the question of our rules of procedure and why it wasn't on the website, and it had been taken down by mistake. And looking at it, I said, wait a minute, this has got things in it that really need to be fixed. And so I drafted a revision of the rules of procedure, and we put it on the Dropbox. The only real change is I asked why we have a secretary instead of a vice chairman. And I think that the secretary part came from years ago when the secretary actually signed the minutes and sent them off, whereas today the staff takes care of that. So I'm suggesting that we turn the secretary into a vice chairman, which is really what he does today. And other than that, they're pretty straightforward. Did anybody look at them or have any comments about them?
Well,
I didn't look at your new ones. I didn't see your new ones, but I did look at the ones that Bruce shared us years ago, and I thought they were a little outdated compared to what we actually do.
Yeah.
Well, there's new ones in the Dropbox, and there's no urgency to change them tonight, but I think maybe by the next meeting, we should be prepared to make the edits that you guys think are necessary.
Were there other things that you're really trying to get at, Dave? I know it's almost, your version is about a page or a page and a half shorter than the old one. It's not a long document to begin with. So I just wondered if there were, other than the chairman, I saw that, vice chairman, no one was paying any attention to voting. The fact is that in our procedures, if the chairman wasn't able to make a meeting, our procedures called for the sitting commissioners to somebody makes a motion and somebody's appointed as a result of a motion and voted to be the temporary chairman for that meeting. But I'm not sure if that ever happened. I know, and I never saw that in a meeting I've been attending, and that's been a lot of meetings. But so that's not a critical issue.
I took out some of that, Bruce. The other things it had in there was a thing about the composition of the commission. I mean, that state statute and charter and doesn't really belong in our rules.
Oh, good point.
There were some redundant things where it says the same thing in two different places.
Oh, okay.
So I just tried to clear it up, clarify it, and make it more simple. And there's no mysterious thing in there.
No. Well, I'll look forward to having had some more time to go more carefully over it. Because I think, I mean, having read it, and I've read the other one a number of times, there is not a lot of change proposed here. I mean, in volume of specific changes, yeah, there's a lot, but there's not substance. There's not dramatic change. But let me just, one other moment on the vice chairman. Does the planning commission have a vice chairman?
No.
The zoning board of appeals have a vice chairman?
No.
Does any other elected commission? That might be something we want to reflect on.
Yes, the library board of directors has a vice chairman.
And do they have a secretary?
And they have a corresponding secretary as well.
Hmm.
And they're elected.
That's food for thought.
Okay, well, think about
I suspect
that.
it's all they haven't updated their rules either.
Could be.
Also, the library board has 9 members.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
He speaks like
they're
an
there
expert.
for us to talk about and think about. We don't, as I said, have the urgent need to change them today.
Yeah. But before we move on, Dave, let me just mention though that I sort of raised this in an email to Dave and Mike a couple of weeks ago, only because I was looking for something on the Planning Commission's homepage on the town website, and the Planning Commission's homepage includes their, I don't remember if they call it bylaws, but their document that we call rules and procedures. It's on there for the Planning Commission. So I sent Mike and Dave a note just to sort of raise the question of putting ours on there. And I think it's for good reason to have it there, but
I think we
through
did
oversight or something, it wasn't on ours. So anyway.
put it there, but in the process of putting it there, we read it.
Yeah. Oh, right. Good thought. No objection to that.
I'm glad it's been brought to light. And Dave, I have looked at your edits and I like them. I like the idea of a vice chair over a secretary.
Okay, well, the town supplies all the secretarial stuff
Right.
that used to be done by the commission that didn't have any support in the old days. Okay, anything else, Mike?
I have nothing to add.
Anybody got anything else?
Move we adjourn.
Thank you, Kevin.
I'll
Do we have a
second.
Second by Bruce.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries?
Okay.
Nothing. Thank you, guys.